We're looking at the Jubilee manifesto, and of course it was done yesterday. And the Jubilee government last evening launched its manifesto detailing what Kenyans should be expecting from their second term of leadership. President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto prioritize job creation and industrialization in their blueprint, wooing Kenyans to support them in the forthcoming general election. Together with the cabinet secretaries, they gave their scorecard highlighting their achievements and shortcomings, and Ken Aseka has the details of this.
With just 42 days to the general election, politicians and political parties are at it again, unveiling party manifestos. And yesterday, President Uhuru Kenyatta led the Jubilee team to declare a list of promises to Kenyans, slightly 4.5 years since he took office, as he seeks a second term. Understanding too well that the Jubilee government did make a set of pledges before the 2013 general election, the president and his deputy took time to highlight their achievements.
As we stand here this evening, we are proud as Jubilee under the leadership of Uhuru Kenyatta that our record for 4.5 years speaks for itself.
The recently launched standard gauge railway made to the top list of Jubilee's milestones, together with the thousands of kilometers of roads done since 2013. The Jubilee government also prides in improved electricity connectivity and better relations with other nations for business opportunities.
We shall ensure that every citizen is connected to reliable and affordable electricity, as you have already heard, having proven that point by doubling in 4 years the number of Kenyans connected to electricity, and that has been done since Kenya's independence.
And if the leaders' words are anything to go by, then the Jubilee government is determined to create up to 1.3 million jobs per year and create an environment that will spur wealth creation among Kenyans.
We will move job creation in our country from 800,000 every year to 1.3 million jobs every year.
Emphasizing that Jubilee has the best future plan for Kenyans, Deputy President William Ruto said the opposition coalition NASA cannot match their agenda even a bit.
We have a superior plan, a superior agenda, program for our country that our competitors can only copy.
Regarding education, Jubilee says their plan to have free secondary education is viable.
Our objective is once again to achieve 100% transition from primary to secondary school. And this we intend to start in January of 2018 after having made the necessary investment.
Despite the current biting food shortage that has seen maize flour go missing on shelves, the president is assuring Kenyans that they have a better plan for the next 5 years and that no one will go hungry.
It is our intention to ensure that within the next 5 years, we make Kenya food secure. We have shown our intention to this end by the fertilizer subsidy. When the Jubilee government came into power, Kenyan farmers were buying a bag of fertilizer at Kenya shilling 6,000. Today, as a result of the government subsidy program, Kenyan farmers are able to access that same fertilizer for 1,500 shillings, which has greatly increased the capacity of our farmers to produce.
College and university students have not been left behind, and with this plan, the hustle for internships will be a thing of the past.
That every single Kenyan child who graduates through our TTIs or through university will be guaranteed a government-sponsored internship.
It is one thing to have a promising manifesto and another thing to implement it. And should Jubilee win the August polls, many Kenyans will be keen to see just if all these promises are delivered. For now, the pledges remain word of mouth, and whether the manifesto will influence the voting pattern in the country is a different discussion altogether. Kenaseka, KTN News.
So that's how things went down yesterday during the Jubilee Manifesto launch. We want to have a conversation here in studio and invite you to interact and chime in. Hashtag, of course, is News Center, or at Betty M. Kialo is my Twitter handle. I'd love to hear what you have to say about the conversation here in studio. Let me introduce my panel of guests. I'll start from my immediate right, Onyango Olo. He is the ODM and NASA campaign spokesperson. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We also have Dr. Washington Makodingo. He is a political strategist. Thank you for joining us. And at the end, we have Duncan Okachi. He is a lawyer and a political analyst. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, so yesterday, Deputy President William Ruto said that he gives the Jubilee government an 85% rating. That's an A, saying that, you know, with the next 5 years, they'll be able to get that percentage to 100. I'll start with your rating, Onyango. How do you think they have performed?
But you know, definitely that is far from the truth. My assessment for Jubilee, in all fairness, I would give them a D-.
Wow.
And the reason I would do that is that in a political scenario, you set your agenda, you set the syllabus on which you're going to be marked. In 2013, as you're aware, I was on the Jubilee side. And we did set an agenda. We did present to Kenyans a solid manifesto on which we intended them to judge us and rate us at the end of our term. That manifesto was not a private document. It was a public document. It is there. And it is unfortunate that much of it was never achieved, if not almost entirely. The worst case scenario is that today, Jubilee has presented another manifesto, which is a continuation of the other manifesto. Quite well and quite good. But at the time that Jubilee is unveiling the manifesto, one of the most basic rights of the basic issues that should never afflict humanity in this century, food crisis, is afflicting the people of this country.
All right.
Remember, Betty, as I conclude this question of yours, that the issue of food changed the course of political history of the world as a whole, if not Europe in particular. In 1889, when the French Revolution started, it started over hunger, if I would put it like that. And that brought an end to the monarchies and brought an end to the feudal system of Europe and the world at all. And a new political order of neoliberalism stepped in, where individual and group rights became supreme. And that was the bastion upon which the Jubilee Manifesto of 2013 was issued to the people of Kenya. Today, 4 years down the line, we are falling on the back of the promises that we made to the people of Kenya on matters of infrastructure, matters of agriculture, matters of education, virtually in all aspects. And therefore, but D- is such a generous award.
All right, so Makodingo, is it a D-? Considering that, you know, we're at a time that, you know, there's no unga in the shelves. If you look at the comments that Kenyans are making on social media, and even when you talk to them on the streets, they're saying that they're still struggling with the most basic of commodities.
I think 85% is a fair assessment, and an A- will be a fair assessment. There are a couple of things, like the president said yesterday. Their promises were made. Very few of them haven't been done. But that is mostly because we really are a developing country. So if we promised 5 ultra-modern stadiums, and we chose to do SGR from Mombasa to Nairobi in record time with the lowest fare prices between Mombasa and Nairobi, I think that's a fair trade-off. And it's something, when you set up an agenda on a manifesto, in a system where you have a 2-term presidency, we expect that you have a 10-year plan, that you're going to implement for 10 years. And at the end of that term, your second term, you should have been able to implement everything.
But at the same
time, if you've
time,
implemented 85% of it, let's see. What did we promise? We promised a digital learning platform. 850,000 devices have been given out to children in schools.
Just the other day, though.
No, just the other day, but it wasn't because we didn't try. It is because the process got bogged down in court processes through the High Court, the review, the procurement system, the Court of Appeal. They had to enter consent for the process to start afresh. It wasn't because we didn't want to. It is because Onyango law will tell you that Jubilee wanted to do this on day one, from 2013 when they got into power. SGR has been delivered. We have been constructing roads. Free maternity health care has been delivered. NHIF has been revamped, now probably one of the best health insurance providers in the country. Irrigation has been, the pilot phase, half of it has been done, and it has produced quite remarkable results. Expansion,
not as per what had been promised. The Galana Kulalu project still has so many questions.
Galana Kulalu has a lot of questions to be answered, and those questions were answered in Parliament. It cost 2.5 billion shillings to implement a 5,000, half of the acreage, because the original pilot plan was 10,000 acreage. We did 5,000 acreage with results varying, because we were testing varieties of grain. 10 varieties of grain were tested with varying results from 6 bags per acre to 39 bags. 39 bags per acre is the highest production per acre ever anywhere in this country. So
if we had that, would we be having the crisis that we're in right now?
It was a pilot phase. It's 5,000 acres. It produced 150,000 bags of maize.
All right.
So, of course, it's not going to cure our problems, but you're on the right path to doing this. You ask NASA what they intend to do, and they're talking about the same things.
Okay, we will get to that. Let me hear, Duncan, your assessment. Jubilee says that they have been able to create, they promised in 2013 they would create 5 million jobs at the end of their term. Right now, our unemployment rate still is at 40%. Actually, when they got into power, it was 39.1. Now it's actually moved to 40%. Where are these jobs? How come people are not feeling where these jobs are?
Betty, if I may start from where you started with my colleague panelists, is that I was actually going to give them a C.
Okay.
But based on the fact that Mr. Onyango Lo, who was an insider, has given them a D minus, or it's a D, I lack the authority to give them anything higher than that. But actually, based on fact, in terms of what we are seeing, Betty, that's a very, very serious issue. And that's why my colleague panelists, Makodingo and many others, I would actually say are not getting it right. The moment you step into a podium and promise Kenyans that this is what we are going to deliver, it is not something that you dreamt yesterday and come and tell people and expect them to buy it, and then after 5 years, you come and tell them, at least we tried. That's the joke of the century. If you promise Kenyans hell, give them hell sooner than you actually promised. If you look at what Trump is doing, whatever he promised, good, bad, or ugly, he's actually already on that platform and fighting with the courts left, right, center.
According to you, Duncan, what is it that they have done right? It's a D minus. At least it's not an E. So what is that thing that they think they've done right?
That's a very hard question for me to answer honestly, because I would actually say, yes, there are gains which are there. There's infrastructure developments which are there. We have seen the SGR, which has already been completed. We have seen, yes, women are actually giving birth free of charge, even though there are other issues like you have to account for it afterwards and they get money afterwards. There are those issues, and we cannot say that they failed totally. And that's why, for me, I was to give them a C.
Okay.
However, once you stepped into the podium and promised these particular aspects, you're actually supposed to be measured by those and nothing less.
All right. One of the things that the president has mentioned is that, some of these things need time. They promised that it will go to a double-digit, economy, but that has not happened. But he says that, these things need time. 5 years was just not enough to do everything that they had promised. Does that make, is that a solid description of why we're here where we are?
Betty, it is very, very unfortunate. Let's go back to basics. What is a manifesto? A manifesto is a public declaration of a policy program, especially of a political party, of what it intends to do over a specific period of time. I cannot get into a podium with a manifesto and say, I will turn Kenya into a developed country ad infinitum, without saying 10 years, 5 years, 30 years. So, let us go first. When we gave our manifesto in 2013, we knew that our term was going to be 4.5 years. Remember, it was supposed to be 5 years, but the court had decided that we would go for our elections in March and it will be a shorter period. And we only launched our manifesto when I was in Jubilee at that time. So it is unfortunate when my brother Makodingo comes and says that you issue a manifesto based on a 10-year program because Kenya has got a 2-term presidency. You only issue a manifesto for the term that you are seeking, so that if you are not elected for the second term, we are able to judge you with the exam that you set and the syllabus that you gave yourself. Number one. Number two, it is unfortunate when you say, my brother Makodingo, that Kulalo, the irrigation program, that we were testing on varieties of maize. That was not a research institution. Kenya has got able, competent research institutions that before we could take the public's 2.5 billion shillings to improve on food security, we should only have gone with properly researched varieties that could have been implemented. The government has research institutions. It cannot bring research on issues as important as critical on food production, on which it takes billions and produces nothing.
Betty,
of course.
I know Nyangolo, being a lawyer, may not be familiar with what you call piloting. Yes. When you do piloting, the reason you do 10,000, because the program is for 1 million acres. Yes. The reason you do 10,000 acres is whatever research you do, there has to be on-ground research for the varieties, because Tana River has never had a large-scale maize cultivation program. So you have to do on-ground testing. That is why it's called piloting. You are trying many things to figure out what works.
Is it
so
for
that then
5
you can
years?
expand it.
That is beautiful. Now he is introducing a better word, piloting.
But it is a pilot. It was a pilot. The 10,000 acres was a pilot project.
I'm giving you your time.
You've talked.
Okay, let him just finish his point. Let me just finish his point.
The irrigation project was a pilot project. The Jubilee promise was 1 million acres. You do 10,000 so that you see what works.
How long was that supposed to take, the piloting? Because it's been 4.5 years.
No, piloting can take a while. I mean, it's an irrigation system. You have to put up dams, you have to put up system, you have to put up the machines. It's not something, you don't wake up today and you set up a 10,000 acre irrigation program. Now, has it worked? Yes, now we know what works. Now we can expand the program and ensure that we actually are food secure. But there's something else Onyangolo says. Until, I think, early this year, Onyangolo was the biggest defender of Jubilee.
Yes.
For 4 years.
Yes.
He defended the government for 4 years on a program they implemented. Every day, if you asked him, he will tell you we're on course. And in fact, he threw very unpalatable words, left, right, and center at everyone.
But he saw the light.
You cannot be defending something for 4 years, saying every single day of your life that it is working. So Jubilee worked for 4 years perfectly. Then suddenly, for the last 3 months, we have not worked.
Okay, let's not come to the politics of Onyango law.
We must also
okay, you want to say something about that?
I wanted him to finish first so that he doesn't say I've interrupted him.
No, I think he's done.
Okay. First, let me go to what he has said first and foremost. So for 10,000 acres in a project of 1 million, we have used 2.5 billion.
No, we only did 5,000 acres.
Oh, thank you. So 5,000, we used 2.5 billion. Yes. For 1 million, we were going to use 2.5 trillion. Is that what you're saying? What? Is it feasible?
No, it is not.
Oh, thank you. It is not.
2 trillion is not feasible. Onyangolo, wait. Don't discuss.
Let him just finish.
But he's
I mean, you made your. Let him just make his argument.
So, Betty, what I'm saying is, when he's talking of a pilot project, that is totally different from a research project, which was his original position, which has now shifted. Now, let us go to this issue which he has brought in, which we should dispense with very fast, about Onyangolo defending Jubilee for 4 years and seeing the light, etc., etc. You remember, somewhere mid the way, I was on record, and Makodingo, you must accept this, when I addressed the nation and I told Jubilee that corruption must stop, that we never sent any individual or part of the party to go and steal or thieve on our behalf, and my problems began. All
right. Interesting. Duncan, what do you have to say about this? The projects that have been started, others have been blamed and criticized because of inflated costs. How is that going to affect the Jubilee administration's re-election?
Actually, that's the major issue, Betty, and I was so surprised that that was not even highlighted. Because if they dealt with the issues of corruption, actually, as Onyango Olo is actually indicating, they would actually be re-elected like tomorrow. But the moment they actually look the other way, it actually means that they do not actually stand a chance of being elected. And you see, from amongst themselves, they're actually the biggest beneficiaries of that. And that is why each and every project that you'll actually talk about in terms of Jubilee, whether it is the SGR, whether you come to the laptops, whether you come to the issues of hospitals, you'll actually find that there's a big element of corruption. That particular burden is being shouldered by the Kenyans. And that is why even when you try to justify the issue of the Galana Kulalu project as much as possible, I may not know the figures, I'm a lawyer, maybe as he says, but I can say that I had the cabinet secretary actually saying there's a very big issue with that particular project, it is a non-starter, and they have to rethink twice. So who am I actually to now cast doubt and start saying it is a success? Therefore, we must actually look at manifestos and say that we'll not just defend for the sake of defending. This is a social contract you have with the Kenyan people, so that if you stand on a pedestal and say, this is what I will deliver, let there not be excuses. If NASA today stands on the pedestal and says, this is what we will deliver, I can tell you, before they start telling us about the next 5 years after re-election, we must start saying, you said ABCD. Have you delivered? You start from what you have already promised before you go to the next chapter.
All right. I want us to go back, Makudingo, to something that you had started talking about in this job creation. 2013, you know, the promise was 5 million jobs. That has not happened. Right now, it's the promise is 1.3 million jobs yearly. How is that going to happen?
What do you mean that has not happened? We have statistics
5 million jobs?
We have statistics from Kenya Bureau of Standards saying we create 850,000 jobs a year.
Where are these jobs?
How many,
which sectors?
How many jobs were lost?
No. Okay. There's a question that has come from him and from you. First, we all know that government doesn't actually employ people. Governments do not have capacity to do that. Governments create enabling environment for people to actually get work. Now, the formal sector has been growing before, was growing, I think, around 7.5% per annum. Yeah, that has now improved, slightly improved to around 30% per annum, the formal sector. But the informal sector, the support sector, where a lot of the people, a lot of the jobs have been created, has also been growing significantly. And that is why a lot of the jobs have been created. Now, for you to create jobs, you need to industrialize, you need to make it easy doing business, ease of doing business as to improve. And everybody knows, I mean, the whole world knows that over the last couple of years, Kenya has been the third most improved country in ease of doing business, from a World Bank IMF report released every year. So we've had significant increases in ease of doing business. We've reformed the Companies Act. Now it is easier for you to register a company. You don't even need a lawyer. I'm not so sure they're quite happy about that. SMEs, there's a better SME enabling environment for job creation. But more importantly, we are actually investing on the things that support industrialization. We're investing in infrastructure, huge infrastructure projects like the SGR. We are investing huge amounts of money in electricity. Today, we actually have a surplus, electricity surplus. The problem is that the transmission network isn't as efficient as it should be, and some of it is taking quite a bit of time. Like Turkana, the wind power project is over, but the terrain is rough. The community land acquisition rights take longer because you have a longer litigation process. Kipevu would have supplied a lot of power by now, but the process was dragged in Kajiado for years, I think 3 years, in a court process over Wayleaf. Yeah, so we are addressing these issues. We are providing power. How
does that translate to my question to do with jobs?
Yes, but to create jobs, you need to create industries. Yeah, to create those industries, you need to put up the infrastructure you require to create those industries. Now, I have had questions about job losses, about companies shutting down. A lot of these companies shutting down are just because of either gross incompetence or their processes were just off.
But it is expensive to do business in Kenya.
Kenya, over the last 2 years, Kenya has had the highest foreign direct investment in Africa. Over the last 3 years, people are actually finding it attractive to invest in Kenya. People are finding it attractive to give money to Kenya to do development projects. You can't say that is an economy that's doing badly.
So
we've been growing at 5.5%.
I'd like to hear Onyango Olo's contribution to that.
It is very unfortunate.
The government has already created that environment.
One thing I agree that it is the role of the government to create an environment through which job creation would be conducted. But my brother and colleague is forgetting to appreciate one thing clear, that we are talking about a manifesto. We are talking about the promises that Jubilee made and the promises that they are now making. Whether they achieved what they made and whether what they are making are achievable, measurable, and attainable within the time span of 5 years. And I want to bring it to your attention that whether those people left or closed because of incompetence, whether they left because of what, never promise what you cannot deliver. When we promised those jobs, we must have looked at those challenges. When we promised that we were going to deliver on A, B, C, D, you must look at the flip side of it. You cannot turn back to the people who relied on you and elected you on the basis that you'll create jobs for them and say, look, these ones, they just left because they were incompetent. These ones also left because of A, B, C, D. As we are talking today, Kenyans are worse than they were 4 years ago. And when you're talking about these jobs which have been created in their millions, according to you, Daktari, I wonder whether we are living in two different countries. Because everywhere you go, people are jobless, people are crying. And that is why you see even the Jubilee Manifesto, the one they are unveiling today, one of the things they must address now is that they want a job creation to be at the foremost, and that they are planning to make it now 1.3, not even 1. Forget that the other one is not delivered. And more importantly, my brother, Kenyans live in Kenya and they know what has been going on. No amount of words, no amount of cajoling will make the manifesto that was not delivered appear to have been delivered. Jobs have not been created at the rate at which Jubilee, and I was there myself, promised that we would create jobs. And one of the reasons that have affected this is issues of corruption that has made doing business in Kenya extremely expensive. You are talking of us having electricity. Well, we may have connected 3 million people. But is that what we promised Kenyans? We promised them in excess of 10 million. So it is not that I did 10, yet I promised 100. It means you lied to the people, and you will not be trusted with power.
Okay, your reaction to that, and here, Duncan.
Two quick things. One, between 2013 and now, more Kenyans, 3 times the amount of Kenyans have been connected to electricity compared to between independence and 2013. That is not a mean achievement by any measure, by any standard, even in corporate organizations. But about corruption, I mean, they keep mentioning corruption. As a president, what do you do about corruption? If people are found, allegations, not even corruption, all of these issues around corruption are all allegations. None of them has been proven anywhere, yeah? Other than NYS, but even NYS, the people have been taken to court and the court process is going on. When the allegations of corruption, as a president, the president stood before Kenyans 2 years ago, gave them names that the EACC had given him, told those people to step aside and allow for investigations. The first president in the history of this country to fire 6 cabinet secretaries because of allegations of corruption. None of them has even been taken to court to begin with. The president set up, when he realized that the system wasn't working, the constitutional system, the institutions weren't working, he set up a multi-agency stakeholder task force to actually deal with corruption and deal with a lot of these cases. Yeah? And it was set up through the judiciary, DPP, EACC, CAJ, all these institutions were put in place. In my opinion, constitutionally speaking, the president has done everything he possibly could about corruption. Now, what is remaining is that either the independent institutions, and you know Kenyans keep saying this, when Jubilee does something, the president does something that they feel is unconstitutional, they're the first one to shout at the top of their voices. And yet, they want us to go and line people up in front in Uhuru Park and shoot them when there are allegations of corruption. Now, as you deal with that and you put up the institutional framework for dealing with corruption, you also, of course, has to give Kenyans value for money. And he's been doing this, yeah? You can't continue alleging corruption without proof and then come up and say people are corrupt, money being stolen. Where is this money being stolen?
So you've taken us back to that statement that the president made in State House. Mnataka nifanye nini? You are the president. If all these allegations, like you call them, are being made, we have not seen investigations by these institutions or these agencies that you're saying that have been put up. Nothing is happening. People have lost, we've lost public resources. SGR has very many questions. You have all this NYS scandal. Many billions of shillings really have been lost. So can you really sit and say that, it's not the place of the president to do anything about it?
I think we talk about the presidency with a mindset of the Kanu era presidency. Today, the president can only do so much. As a president, he can only do so much. If people in his office or in his government are corrupt, he can fire them. The most he can do. The rest, they are independent institutions. And everybody in this country knows that the police are independent, the DPP is independent, the judiciary is independent, EACC is independent. When it has not worked, you've seen our members of parliament, when institutions have not worked, you've seen our members of parliament lead a campaign to remove those people from office and put in people who can actually do something about this.
Who at the end of the day don't do anything about it?
The president can't wake up one day and shoot people in front of Uhuru Park because they're corrupt.
Has the president done enough, or it's not in his place to do really anything or follow through with, these corruption allegations?
I will tell you something that if you look at what Makodingo is actually saying, that is a myopic interpretation of our Constitution. Mm-hmm. The Constitution has given the President all the powers, and he has actually exercised it. When they didn't want Kinisu and the core commissioners to be in office, it was hatched from State House, and at the end of the day, Kinisu was out. When they didn't want the deputy police commissioner, the lady deputy police commissioner, she was out despite the constitutional provisions. And I will tell you, when the president wanted a list of these particular names, even though it was not procedural, he was given a list from EACC, and he actually said this is what will happen. And therefore, if you say that this is a moribund president who does not have powers, I will actually align myself to the people who are saying this is a president who has actually given up. And that is why he has no business asking for another 5 years, so that he will be telling us, what do you want me to do? Yet today he stands and says, I have a manifesto. If you look at how these particular aspects has been happening, it is a game of trying to defend themselves. It is a game of musical chairs. The moment Jubilee took power, we started having corruption after corruption after corruption scandal, starting with the Hustler Jet scandal. What did they do about that? It was a cover-up. When we were talking about, when people talked about Waiguru, what happened? None other than the president stood and said, no, this is not, she's not culpable. Right. And today she's actually vying. And today when people are in court, Makodingo will not tell you why Waiguru's name is not in court. Today EACC clears her. Tomorrow, her name actually comes up, and the main perpetrator actually says she links this particular individual and says, I gave EACC this particular information. Mm-hmm. Then EACC plays another turn and says, no, we're investigating her. Yet yesterday they had cleared her. If our president was actually exercising zero tolerance to corruption, that is the day the EACC secretariat would have actually seen fire. All right. But today, they sit pretty in office, earning public money. Okay. That manifesto has not really come out clearly to talk about how it's going to arrest this issue to do with corruption.
Yeah. Before I even get to that, I think Dr. Makodingo, with tremendous respect, is doing a great disservice to the Jubilee team. Why do I say that? He tells us that the president is helpless, that the law binds the president, that there's nothing he can do about corruption. With the same breath, he is telling us that Jubilee is undertaking to fight corruption. How? If they have given up, and for your information, the Constitution of the Republic of Kenya is the supreme law of this land. Those manifesto and programs are subservient. So if that document you are saying cannot help the president, the manifesto will never and must never help him, number one. Number two, there are several legislations, if you did not know. The Public Officer Ethics Act, the Leadership and Integrity Act, all those legislations plus several others are supposed to aid the president and his government in fighting corruption. Does it surprise you that 7 years after we gave ourselves a new constitution, we have never operationalized Chapter 6 of the Constitution of Kenya? Yet we have passed several legislation. Is it by coincidence? Is it by mistake? Is it that we forgot about it? And you want to tell us we don't have powers to fight corruption? We have powers, we have the means. What we need is the goodwill from the leadership to fight corruption and eliminate it. Before you even talk of rolling out several other infrastructural development, you must handle the animal in the room, corruption. Yesterday, Budalangi Bridge just collapsed less than a week after the president just launched, or what did he do? He went to launch it. Less than a week. A bridge that has cost us 1.2 billion is a bridge that I don't think should cost you even 50 million. Collapsed. I don't think the gods just came and struck it. It must have been either poor workmanship, corruption, incompetence, whatever, all those things. It has everything to do with the government that has taken our money into a place that it is not sustainable. So, going back to you, Jubilee is not serious in fighting corruption. I said that when I was inside there. I continue saying that. That is why I left it, and I say that is the reason NASA must get a chance to fight corruption, bring more resources so that we roll out these development programs.
All right, Onyango, I'd like to take you on something that Makodingo said, that it really is not the place of the president to follow up on, dealing with these corruption cases. What is your take on that? What can the president do, or what should he do?
This is the CEO of the Republic. We give him the power to appoint ministers. And then, unfortunately for this government that was put in place, he had the numbers in Parliament, the supreme organ of the state. In a sense, he can even lobby Parliament to change laws so that it can give him ample weapons to fight corruption. He has the numbers. If he wanted within a week, we changed laws on security in less than a week, true or false? We have changed laws every day, every night. Why haven't we taken it upon ourselves for our parliament that was Jubilee controlled to give the president sharper weapons if he claims his weapon were blunt, so that we would slay this dragon of corruption once and for all, because corruption thrived and served the Jubilee mandarins.
All right. Makodingo.
Betty has asked you a simple question, and you've just pontificated.
Which one?
She's asked you, what else?
I've not answered you, Betty.
You just pontificated.
No, I've not answered you.
Well,
that Parliament can give him whatever weapon he wants, and that he has numbers in Parliament.
The president has... okay, so how do you deal with corruption? Let's say, for example, today there's an allegation of corruption. Mm-hmm. I allege that you are my worker, you are corrupt, and I'm a government institution. If I was a corporate organization, I'll fire you. If I was a government institution, what do? I call in EACC to conduct investigation, both EACC and the DCI, to conduct investigations under the auspices of the DPP. Mm. Then when investigations are complete, recommendations are made to the DPP whether corruption actually did take place, theft of public money did take place, and if theft of public money took place, you are taken to court. Yeah? Then you let the judicial process go on. I mean, you both of you are lawyers, you know this. Is there any of those things, that the president has sat on? Is there any of those processes that the president has actually impeded? In fact, when it didn't work, he called the private sector, he called KEPSA, private sector together, and they put up a private sector initiative to actually deal with corruption. They set up a multi-agency task force to deal with corruption, to fast-track a lot of these corruption cases. There are nearly 255 corruption cases within our judicial system. What has he stopped from happening that should have happened?
That's the question you want? Did you listen to him? It seems you are not listening when he's talking, because he's a lawyer and is here more independent. My brother, do you know how many times we have disbanded the anti-corruption body?
No? Yeah. Thrice.
Thank you. 3 times. Why? Because it was never effective. Why can't we, if he feels this one is not serving him and he has the numbers in Parliament, what stops him?
You realize to disband the ACC, you need a constitutional amendment, right?
I'm talking, or even empower it. Or even empower it.
All right. Duncan, what is your assessment of this conversation to do with corruption? What is that thing that needs to be done? What's that silver bullet that needs to be injected into this disease?
The silver bullet, Betty, is having someone who will have zero tolerance to corruption, whether it is your relative or whether it is someone in your party, whether it's someone from your tribe, it doesn't matter. You can see the president's hands are tied, just like Makodingo is saying, because you find that his own sister's name is actually on that list in the 5 billion scandal. What has he done about that? That is his sister. If he had done something about that, then fine. But which hands are tied in that particular aspect? You will actually find that if the president does not actually say that I do abhor corruption, whether it is in my family or not, and I give everyone the right to deal with that, you'll actually see the EACC detectives moving in, even on his own sister, and dealing with that. But when he keeps quiet, you find a scandal like that one, the NYS scandal, and he does not talk about Anne Waiguru. They are sacred cows. You actually saw Anne Waiguru actually submitted her own resignation when the others were being told you have to resign or step aside. That tells you that there are those people who are untouchable. You look at actually the deputy president. How many scandals has faced him as an individual? And I'm live on air and I will say it. There are many. Which hands are tied to deal with that? You can actually see that in other countries, even a president, and it just happened a month ago, is actually facing a trial as the president himself. That actually tells you, like what Onyangolo is saying. If you strengthen these institutions, show them that there's what is written in law, but there's also what is philosophical in terms of the government of the day. If the government of the day says that we don't care, if it is my wife, deal with her. It is my son, deal with that particular individual.
This is very unfortunate.
Makudingo, I'd like to hear your thoughts on if Jubilee is given the next 5 years, what are they going to do to deal with corruption? Because as you mentioned, it seems like nothing can ever be done about corruption. The institutions are not working. So let's just, sit back and, hope that nobody else is going to steal public funds. So if they're given 5 years, what is that thing that they're going to do to deal with this thing?
You and your panelists keep saying, I say it, the institutions are not working. The institutions are working. Just give them time. I think
How much time?
Part of the problem we have in this country
Another 5 years.
is gross in impatience with institutions. We do not want to build institutions, build their capacity, and give them time to actually do their job. Part of this, in my opinion, EACC, no country, no serious country deals with corruption through a commission. Yeah. The best systems that work are multi-agency task forces that bring everybody on board so that they can pursue these things properly. Now, that is what we found ourselves with. And short of a constitutional, a referendum, in fact, to remove EACC because it's an independent institution, short of that, so we have to the president had to figure out a better way of dealing with corruption, which is why he set up the task force to be able to deal with corruption. And we're doing that.
And
we are resourcing it.
Is it working? Are we seeing any successes? Are we seeing any convictions?
It is what we are seeing recoveries. We've recovered nearly 30 billion shillings through the asset recovery agency. We've seen a lot of effort being put into stopping money laundering and stopping a lot of this corruption has been because people, as people usually say, you'll carry sacks of money, bags and bags of money out of banks through corrupt means. Now we've seen this being tightened. We've seen know your customer regulations in banks being tightened. Today you can't just walk into a bank and withdraw 50 million shillings that was transferred to you through government.
But that's the citizens. What about the big dogs, the top dogs? What's happening to them?
Which top dogs?
The people who cannot be convicted, even if they steal public funds.
Which are these people? You keep saying there are people who cannot be convicted. Which are these people? What are these substantive allegations against them that have been investigated, proven, and taken to DPP and is refused to prosecute? Who are they?
And
you keep saying there was an affair scandal.
And Makudingo, that takes me to my question. What is that thing then that the Jubilee government is going to do in the next 5 years to promise Kenyans that they will not be losing their money to these scandals?
Jubilee is already doing quite a lot. We have strengthened the procurement agencies. In fact, we reviewed the procurement law to tighten the procurement process so that there is value for money for Kenyans. And it is being implemented. We've seen a lot of procurement malpractices being arrested in the bud. The president has said this before and is going to and he keeps saying it and he does something about it, that not tolerate any of his officials, any of his cabinet secretaries, principal secretaries involved in corruption. If you have, the problem that he finds himself in is that we told him that there are nearly 255 people who are corrupt. We told him his cabinet secretaries were corrupt. He fired them. 2 years down the line, none of these cabinet secretaries have been prosecuted. In fact, even the principal secretary, I think just 2. Mangiti, and I'm not so sure even if Engineer Kamau has been taken to court to court yet. So then you find yourself in a situation where people make noise. The opposition will make noise, civil society organizations will make noise, people will make allegations of corruption with absolutely no proof, and then you expect the president to act on it and yet there is no evidence. So then he's going to keep firing people on a daily basis, and yet there is actually no evidence.
So does that mean that it is a failure on the whole administration, that they have not found a solution to deal with this?
The administration is following the law on dealing with corruption. The administration is building capacity of the institutions that should do this. The administration has fired people who have been alleged to be corrupt. Honestly, I think the backbone for fighting corruption has been set. The zero tolerance to corruption is taking root. Another 5 years, we'll see this system being cleansed.
Is it true, Onyango, that they just need 5 years more to do these things?
It is quite unfortunate. I would have loved to be told that give us 5 more years, because with the 4.5 years, this is what we have done with corruption. It is unfortunate, and that's why I maintain that my colleague is not doing his wing of the coalition, or his wing of the Jubilee administration fair justice, when he says that where's the evidence, that they cannot act without evidence. Are you saying His Excellency the President sacked 6 of his ministers without evidence? Are you telling us Uhuru just resigned without evidence? Are you telling us our president is so haphazard that he just wakes up one day and says he doesn't like your face and you go?
The president stood up and said there are substantive allegations. And he fired people on that basis.
Thank you.
But allegations have to be proven in court.
Can I move on? So when there is evidence and some parts of the system are not working, and you are the CEO or you are the head of your family, the buck stops with you. You have to investigate and find out how come the prosecution is slowing down. I know the judiciary is independent, but I know the DPP is an office that also acts on evidence tabled before it. But remember, when you take the reins and you swear to be the President of the Republic, it is upon the manifesto that you have given. So if you are saying that these things cannot be done by the current government, then all the pledges they gave to us on manifesto in 2013 were false, and deliberately so. What I would want you to, so that we move forward out of this corruption, let us admit that in that aspect, the government has failed miserably, so that we look at these grand programs that they have laid out: infrastructure, development, water, which they want to harvest and give us all clean water. When a hotel associated by a senior member of Jubilee in the city of Nairobi, people die of cholera in this age and time. What are you telling us?
All right.
Are we regressing or progressing?
Okay.
Betty,
as we wrap up,
something else that we need to know is that we may say that these institutions or organizations are independent. Yes, they are in the Constitution. But the framers of the Constitution also notice that they cannot be totally independent. Yes. There is a clause, after every independence clause, says that, but these particular individuals can leave office if A, B, C, D. And one of those ones is gross incompetence, such that if these particular members of the Secretariat of EACC gave the president names without evidence, as Makodingo is actually saying, that is a reason enough for the president to actually now initiate this particular aspect. And it goes through Parliament, where Onyango Law says they enjoy the majority. So that if they say that this person is not acting well in terms of fighting a certain agenda that we want to fight, then there's everything within the law to empower the president to deal with that. However, the issue comes in terms of how do they use that. You will see that the Auditor General points out many, many issues in terms of corruption, and not only on the national platform, even on the county platform. Yes. And it is good for the country. But what happens? When he does that, he's actually labeled that, no, this person is actually having his own agenda and you want to kick him out. Then what they do, they go back and realize, oh, there's this clause on gross incompetence on ABCD. That is what now the regime decides to use in terms of trying to fight this particular individual. The message that is sent out is that this is a regime that does not want any person who comes to fight corruption, but wants a person who is actually employed to maintain the status quo. Such that the saying is that if you are given the chairmanship of EACC, you are given that post to protect these particular thieves, not to fight them. Okay. The moment you decide to do your job, you'll actually find it.
Let me say something just as that ends. Okay, sorry, and as I...
Yes, and as you talk about that, one of the last comments that the Deputy President spoke about is, the promise of the 5 stadia. Maybe you could talk about that. He says that, I think 4 of them will be completed in 3 months. Is that going to happen in 3 months? That West Pokot, Kiambu, quite a number of them, really.
Ruringu. Just before I answer that, I think we usually have this conversation about corruption, a one-sided conversation about corruption, and nobody asks, whether NASA actually has capacity to deal with corruption.
We will be talking about that.
Yeah, and the most glaring things you can see is NASA's principal financier, is a mega entrepreneur. Yeah, it's out there in the open. Everybody knows he's a mega entrepreneur. So the NASA team, the entire team, the Pentagon, is laden with corruption. One of them even sold an embassy. Who sells an embassy? A country's embassy. One of them sold an embassy. One of them robbed the dead of a cemetery land. There are many issues around the former prime minister. He failed miserably to deal with corruption in his own office when he was in power just a couple of years back. And we saw when the governor, I think the governor of Kilifi, there were allegations of corruption against the governor of Kilifi. He flew to Kilifi the same day to hold a press conference and defend him, and say, we need to give independent institutions time to deal with these things. These are just allegations. You cannot attack someone on allegations. And yet, when it's flipped on Jubilee and giving institutions time to deal with these things, he says, Jubilee is incompetent, they don't know how to deal with corruption.
But they are in power.
What political will?
They are in power.
What political will is he going to? No, but CORD is also in power in 24 counties. What have they done about corruption? CORD is in power in 24 counties. They're responsible for agriculture, animal and food and crop husbandry. What have they done about food? Food agriculture is a default function. We keep saying they are not in power, but CORD controls a majority. In fact, a majority of the counties in this country. What it is they have done. Now, and these are the people who finance him. These governors are the ones who finance him.
Here. Let him comment on that.
No, Nyangolo. It is extremely unfortunate that Makodingo walks in here and starts banding names. And you know very well, even without names, talking about the principles, we only have 5 principles. About the embassies that were sold, we know that a senior official of the government was taken to court and was a PS. Of course, he was running now under Jubilee. If you forget, he was taken. No court principal was ever taken to court over that. You may not be aware, but let me bring it to your attention, that when the issue of cemetery came in, our old mayor of the city was arraigned in court. Okay? You have records you can check as part of the government. So when we talk about corruption in NASA, you must appreciate that you have got the instruments of governance, and you can even, and criminal matters, for your information, have no time limitation. You can still go and pick them and take them to court. Are you also admitting to us that the president and the government is failing in that also?
It's very interesting.
And no, I gave you time to talk, my brother. Because if you know very well that these principals also committed acts of corruption, go get them. There are no statutory limitations. And then you talked about 24 counties which are under NASA, which have not worked on agriculture, have not worked on it. Thank you so much. They have 24, my brother. But are you aware, or have you heard of this thing that resources follow function? That is why NASA wants to take government, so that if you are given agriculture, you are given the resources to implement the agriculture. So that if you are given those things which the Constitution says you should be given, you are given resources to follow it. Nobody can give you responsibility without power to execute that responsibility. The Constitution gives those things to those county governments, but the current government has refused to follow it up with resources so that those county governments could implement it.
All right, we have to wind up. We have to wind up. And I had asked you a question, Makudinga, about the 9, now it's 9, it used to be 5, but now it's 9 stadia across the country. The Deputy President says in 3 months this is going to come to fruition. Is that something really that, Kenyans can hold them to? We saw pictures, surface online of some of these stadia that he's talking about, and they're not even maybe 50% complete.
On the stadia, my opinion, is that an ultra-modern stadia makes no economic sense. Yeah, the South Africans are grappling with it, with the stadium they built for World Cup. After that, they really do not know what to do with it. Research after research has been conducted to look at the viability of stadia. For a start, and when you say they'll be complete in 3 months, for a start, make the surfaces playable, make the stands decent.
So it's not completed, but functional.
Make this stadia functional so that at least we begin to build talent, we begin to create ground for talent to be built as we look for money to build that ultra-modern stadia that appeared so glossy on the Jubilee Manifesto.
But doesn't it go back to the promises that you make? Okay, very, very quickly on that comment. Very
briefly on that comment. Either Makodingo is lying to Kenyans or the Deputy President is lying to Kenyans. He cannot tell Kenyans that they are going to construct state-of-the-art stadiums and then you stand here to talk on his behalf and say those things are not feasible. Are you saying Jubilee did not research onto these things?
I said my opinion.
So this opinion of yours, are you saying Jubilee gave us something they did not research on?
All right. Duncan Okach.
Betty, my parting shot will be I yearn for the day whereby manifestos will actually be honest. Some Kenyans will actually be given honest manifestos. Otherwise, it will just be a show for the sake of it, and there's nothing to it. And it will actually be taking Kenyans for a ride. It will just be a choreographed act and play, but without any tangible aspects, such that even sitting here and discussing manifestos will be an act in futility.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. Onyango Lohi is the ODM and NASA spokesperson. Dr. Washington Makodingo is a political strategist, and Duncan Okach is a lawyer and a political analyst. Thank you very much for your time. Tomorrow, maybe we'll be coming here to discuss the NASA manifesto, what it has to offer, if it's better than what Jubilee has to offer. All right, so we'll talk about that later on. So we'll take a break right now on News Center, but we're coming back to continue with our coverage. Don't go away. We'll be right back.